I saw Elvis in hell. What he was doing there shocked me. I never thought I would see a face like that in a place like hell. You know the face. The whole world knows the face. It is the face that is printed on t-shirts, painted on velvet, and stamped on gold records. It is the face of a man they called a king. But when I saw him, he was not wearing a jumpsuit of sequins. He was not standing on a stage with bright lights. He was on his knees. And the look in his eyes was not confidence. It was absolute, eternal terror. I am telling you this because I need you to understand something very important. Fame is not a blessing. Fame can be a curse that eats your soul while you are still alive, and it continues to eat you after you die. My name is Thomas. For 20 years, I worked in the skyscrapers of Nashville, Tennessee. I was a man who manufactured idols. I was a marketing director for one of the biggest record labels in the country. My job was not just to sell music. My job was to take a human being, a regular person with flaws and sins, and polish them until they looked like a god. I taught people how to worship them, and I was very good at my job. But I did not start there. I did not start in the high-rise offices with the leather chairs and the view of the city. I started at the bottom. When I was 20 years old, I was a warehouse packer. I worked in a distribution center just outside the city limits. It was a hot, dusty concrete box. My job was to take vinyl records and cassette tapes, wrap them in plastic, and shove them into cardboard boxes. I did that for 10 hours a day. My hands were always dry and cut from the paper. My back ached from bending over the conveyor belt. I remember looking at the album covers as I packed them. I saw the faces of these singers, smiling, perfect, airbrushed. And I hated my life. I hated the dust. I hated the sweat. I wanted to be like the people on the covers. I wanted to be important. I grew up in a Christian home. My mother took me to church every Sunday. I knew the stories. I knew about Jesus Christ. I knew about the cross. But as I stood there packing boxes, Jesus felt very far away. The singers on the covers felt real. Their money felt real. Their fame felt real. I made a decision in that warehouse. I decided that I would do whatever it took to get out of the dust and into the gold. I did not care about salvation. I cared about success. It took me 15 years to climb the ladder. I worked harder than anyone else. I learned how to talk to people. I learned how to lie without blinking. I learned that the music industry is not about art. It is about creating a product that people become addicted to. By the time I was 40, I was the director. I had the corner office, I had the expensive car, I had the respect of the industry. But inside, I was rotting. People look for Christian testimonies because they want to feel something. They want to know that there is more to this life than just paying bills and dying. I understand that. I used to search for meaning too, but I looked for it in the wrong places. You might be watching this because you are curious about testimonies of hell. You want to know if the fire is real. You want to know if the torment is real. I am here to tell you that it is more real than the chair you are sitting on. It is more real than the screen you are watching. But the scariest part of hell is not just the pain, it is the truth. In hell, you cannot lie to yourself anymore. Let me take you back to the day that changed everything. It was a Tuesday. We were in the main boardroom. It was a cold room made of glass and steel. The air conditioning was always set too low, so everyone had to wear their suit jackets. There were 10 of us around the table. We were discussing a new artist. He was a young kid, maybe 21 years old. He had a good voice, but that did not matter. What mattered was his look. He was handsome. He had charisma. I remember standing at the head of the table. I had a presentation on the screen behind me. I was pitching the strategy for his debut album. I looked at the other executives and I said something that haunts me to this day. I said, "We need to make him an icon. We need to make the fans feel like they cannot live without him. We are not just selling a song, we are selling a religion." The room went quiet. Then, everyone nodded. They wrote it down in their notebooks. Selling a religion. That was our business model. We wanted the fans to wake up thinking about the artist and go to bed thinking about the artist. We wanted them to spend their last dollar on concert tickets. We wanted their devotion. I felt a surge of pride. I felt powerful. I was creating a star. But deep down, a small voice whispered in my heart. It was the voice of my conscience, the voice I had tried to silence since my days as a warehouse packer. It said, "You are building a golden calf." I pushed the voice away. I took a sip of water and continued. We will call the tour the Resurrection. We will use imagery that suggests he is something more than human. We will use light. We will use white robes. We will make him shine. It is terrifying how easily we can mock God. We use his words. We steal his glory. We take the language of repentance and salvation, and we twist it to sell merchandise. I was a thief. I was stealing glory that belonged to Jesus and giving it to a boy who could barely play the guitar. After the meeting, I went back to my office. I sat in my leather chair and looked out the window at the Nashville skyline. The sun was setting, turning the buildings orange and purple. It was beautiful, but I felt a coldness in my chest. Not a pain, not yet. Just a coldness, like a piece of ice sitting right next to my heart. I tried to ignore it. I picked up my phone and called my wife. I told her I would be working late. Again. She sighed on the other end of the line. She was used to it. I had replaced my family with my career a long time ago. She asked me if I was coming to church on Sunday. I lied and said yes. I always said yes, and I always found an excuse not to go. I did not want to go to church. I did not want to hear about sin. I did not want to hear that I needed to turn back. I was the king of my own world. Why would I bow to anyone else? I hung up the phone and looked at the wall of my office. It was covered in framed records, gold, platinum, multi-platinum. These were my trophies. They were the proof that I was important. But as I looked at them that evening, they looked different. They didn't look like success. They looked like heavy, round stones. They looked like weights. I remembered a verse from the Bible, something about millstones being tied around the neck. I shook my head. I told myself I was just tired. I decided to go down to the studio. We had a state-of-the-art recording studio in the basement of the building. It was soundproof. It was private. It was where the magic happened. I wanted to listen to the new tracks we had recorded. I wanted to lose myself in the music. I wanted to forget the cold feeling in my chest. I took the elevator down. The doors opened into the hallway. It was quiet. Most of the staff had gone home. The cleaning crew was working on the upper floors. I was alone. I walked into the studio and closed the heavy, double-insulated door behind me. The silence was instant. It was a thick, heavy silence. The kind of silence that presses against your ears. I sat down at the mixing console. It was a massive desk with thousands of buttons and lights. It looked like the cockpit of a spaceship. I reached out to turn on the speakers. I wanted noise. I wanted volume. I wanted to drown out my thoughts. But before I could touch the dial, the coldness in my chest changed. It turned into heat. A sudden, searing heat. It felt like someone had driven a hot iron spike right through my sternum. I gasped. The pain was immediate and overwhelming. My left arm went numb. My hand froze in midair. I tried to stand up, but my legs gave way. I collapsed onto the carpet. The room spun. The gold records on the walls seemed to be laughing at me. The lights on the console blurred into streaks of red and green. I tried to scream. I opened my mouth to call for help. "Security!" I tried to yell. "Someone help me!" But no sound came out. My throat was tight, like a hand was squeezing it. And even if I could have screamed, it would not have mattered. That room was designed to keep sound in. It was designed so that the drums and the guitars would not disturb the people outside. Now, it was ensuring that my death would be a private event. I was a marketing director. I knew everyone in town. I had the phone numbers of millionaires and stars in my pocket. But lying there on that floor, clutching my chest, I was nobody. I was just a dying man. Panic set in, real, primal panic. I clawed at the carpet. I tried to drag myself toward the door. It was only 10 feet away, but it felt like 10 miles. The pain in my chest was crushing me. It felt like an elephant was standing on my rib cage. Every breath was a struggle. I wheezed. I gagged. My mind started racing. I thought about my wife. I thought about the lie I told her an hour ago. I thought about the resurrection tour I was planning. The irony hit me like a physical blow. I was planning a fake resurrection for a pop star, and here I was, facing my own very real death. I remembered the warehouse packer days. I remembered the old man who used to work next to me. His name was Arthur. He was a simple man. He hummed hymns while he taped boxes. He used to tell me, "Thomas, don't lose your soul for a dollar. The dollar burns, but the soul lasts." I had laughed at him. I thought he was a fool. I thought he was small. Now, lying on the floor of a multi-million-dollar studio, I knew Arthur was the smartest man I had ever met. And I was the fool. The room began to get dark. The edges of my vision turned black. I felt my heart fluttering, like a bird trapped in a cage, beating its wings against the bars, trying to escape. Then it stopped. It just stopped. The silence in the room became absolute. The hum of the equipment faded. The lights of the console faded. I felt a sensation of falling. It was not like falling off a building. It was like falling into yourself. It was an implosion. My body was still there on the floor, but I was leaving it. I expected to see a light. I expected to see my grandmother. I expected to see a tunnel. You hear about these things in impactful testimonies on television. People float up. They see their bodies. They feel peace. I did not feel peace. I felt weight. I felt like I was made of lead. I was sinking through the floor, sinking through the earth. The darkness was not just an absence of light. It was a substance. It was thick and oily. It stuck to me. It smelled like old copper and stagnant water. I tried to pray. I tried to say the name of Jesus. But my mind was slippery. I could not focus. Every time I tried to think of a prayer, a song lyric popped into my head. One of the jingles I had written. One of the slogans I had created. My mind was full of the garbage I had spent my life producing. I could not find God in the clutter of my own vanity. I continued to fall. Down, down, down. The air grew cold. Not the air-conditioning cold of my office. This was the cold of the grave. The cold of a place where the sun has never shined. Then I landed. I did not land on soft ground. I landed on hard, cold stone. The impact jarred me. I stood up, trembling. I was no longer in the studio. I was no longer in Nashville. I looked around. I was in a hallway, but it was immense. The ceiling was lost in the shadows high above. The walls were made of grey stone, damp and slick. And everywhere I looked, there were statues, hundreds of them, thousands of them. They lined the hallway as far as I could see. They were perfect. They were beautiful. They were carved in poses of adoration. Some were kneeling, some were reaching up with tears carved into their stone cheeks. Some were bowing with their faces to the ground. I walked toward the nearest one. It was a statue of a woman. She was looking up at a pedestal. But the pedestal was empty. There was nothing there, just a block of stone. I leaned in closer to look at the detail of the carving. The work was incredible. It looked so real. I reached out my hand to touch the shoulder of the statue. The moment my finger touched the stone, the statue gasped. I jumped back in horror. The woman's eyes shifted. They moved. She looked at me. Her skin was grey and hard, but she was alive. She was frozen. She was paralyzed in that position. Her eyes were full of a desperate, screaming madness. She could not move her body. She could not look away from the empty pedestal. She was forced to worship nothingness. I realized with a sick feeling in my stomach that this was not a museum. This was a gallery of the lost. These were the idolaters. These were the people who had spent their lives worshipping things that could not save them. They had worshipped money. They had worshipped fame. They had worshipped lovers. They had worshipped themselves. And now, For eternity, they were frozen in the act of worship, but the object of their worship was gone. They were left with the posture, but without the prize. I backed away, my heart hammering in my chest. I wanted to run. I wanted to get out of this grey, silent corridor. I turned to flee, but I felt a force pulling me. It was a magnetic pull. It was dragging me down the hall. I tried to fight it. I dug my heels into the stone floor. But I was weak. The pull was stronger. It was guiding me toward a specific spot. There was an empty space in the line of statues, a space waiting for me, an empty pedestal waiting for my adoration. "No," I shouted. My voice sounded flat and dead in the damp air. "I don't belong here. I am a marketing director. I am a church member." The statues didn't answer. They just kept staring at their empty blocks. I was pulled past them. I saw faces I recognized, not famous people, just regular people. A man in a business suit, frozen while checking an invisible watch. A woman clutching an invisible purse. They were statues of greed, statues of vanity. But the pull didn't stop at the empty spot. It dragged me past it. It dragged me further down the hall, toward a large set of double doors at the end of the corridor. The doors were made of iron. They were hot to the touch. I could feel the heat radiating from them even from 20 feet away. The doors groaned open. I was pulled through them into a massive arena. It looked like a concert hall, but it was twisted. The seats were made of jagged rocks. The stage was a pit of glowing embers. And the sound. The sound was deafening. It was the sound of millions of people screaming, but they weren't screaming in pain. They were screaming in adoration. It was the roar of a crowd. It was the sound I had heard 1,000 times at the concerts I organized. "We love you! We love you! We love you!" The chant was rhythmic. It was hypnotic. I was dragged to the edge of the pit. I looked down. In the center of the embers, there was a man. He was on his knees. He was wearing a white suit, but it was scorched and dirty. He was holding something in his hands. It was a crown, a heavy, golden crown. But the gold was molten. It was dripping through his fingers, burning his flesh, but he could not let go of it. The crown was fused to his hands. He was weeping. He was trying to push the crown away, but he couldn't. Then he lifted his head. I stopped breathing. I knew that face. Every person on earth knew that face. It was the king of rock and roll. It was the man who had the world at his feet. But here, he was a slave. I watched as he tried to open his mouth. He was trying to say something. I leaned over the edge, trying to hear him over the roar of the invisible crowd. He was trying to say the name of Jesus. I could see his lips forming the word. Je. But every time he tried to speak the name, the crowd screamed louder. "We love you!" And instead of words, gold coins poured out of his mouth. He gagged, he choked, he vomited gold and silver coins onto the burning floor. He looked up and locked eyes with me. There was no swagger in his look. There was no king. There was only a man who had been eaten alive by the worship of others. He looked at me with a plea that I will never forget. He was begging for silence. He was begging to be forgotten. And that is when I knew. I wasn't just a spectator. I was one of the people who had put him there. I was a marketing director. I was the one who built the pedestals. I was the one who whipped the crowd into a frenzy. I had spent my life making men into gods. And now I was seeing what happens to false gods. I fell to my knees on the edge of the pit. The heat was unbearable. It wasn't just physical heat, it was the heat of shame. And then I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned around. Standing behind me was a creature. It was tall, wearing a suit that looked exactly like mine, but the fabric was made of human skin. It had no face, just a smooth surface of flesh. In its hand it held a mirror. It held the mirror up to my face. "Look," the creature whispered. Its voice sounded like crunching paper. "Look at your masterpiece." I looked into the mirror, but I didn't see my face. I saw the boardroom. I saw myself standing at the head of the table. I heard my own voice saying, "We are selling a religion." The creature laughed. It was a dry, rasping sound. You wanted worship, Thomas. You wanted to create idols. Welcome to the factory. Here, we build them forever. I realized then that my sin was not just a mistake. It was a crime against the order of the universe. I had tried to steal the throne of God. I wanted to run, but my feet were turning to stone. The grey hardness was creeping up my legs. I was becoming one of the statues. I was becoming a monument to my own vanity. I looked back at the man in the pit, the man the world worshipped. He was still choking on the gold. He was still burning, and I knew, with a terrifying certainty, that unless something changed, unless a miracle happened, I was going to join him. Not as a king, but as the man who sold him the crown. The darkness closed in, the heat rose, and the screaming of the crowd got louder and louder until it was the only thing I could hear. "We love you! We love you!" It was the most hateful sound I have ever heard. The mirror was not made of glass. As I looked closer, I realized the surface was a swirling dark liquid. It was like oil mixed with blood. And the face staring back at me was not the face I saw in the bathroom every morning. It was the face of my soul. It was twisted. It was hungry. It looked like a shark in a suit. "You like what you see, Mr. Director," the creature whispered. Its voice sounded like dry leaves scraping on pavement. "This is the real you. The brand is finally accurate." I tried to look away, but I couldn't. The stone that had started at my feet was now up to my waist. I was heavy. I was immovable. I was becoming a monument to my own ego. I could feel the coldness of the stone seeping into my internal organs. My stomach turned to granite. My liver turned to lead. I was being fossilized alive. The creature tilted the mirror. "Let's review the quarterly earnings, shall we?" The image in the liquid changed. I saw a young girl. I knew her. Her name was Sarah. She was a folk singer from Kentucky. I had signed her 5 years ago. She had a voice like an angel, pure and simple. She wrote songs about her grandmother and her garden. But in the mirror, I saw the meeting where I changed her. I saw myself sitting across from her, holding a contract. I saw my mouth moving. "Sarah, nobody wants to hear about gardens. They want to hear about heartbreak. They want to hear about rebellion. You need to change your look. You need to lose 20 pounds. You need to stop wearing that cross around your neck." I saw Sarah crying in the mirror. I saw her taking the cross off. I saw the light go out of her eyes. Then the scene shifted. I saw Sarah 3 years later. She was in a hotel room. There were bottles of pills everywhere. She was thin, pale, and broken. She was staring at a magazine cover, a cover that I had designed. The headline read, "The Bad Girl of Country Music." She died that night. In the real world, I had sent flowers to the funeral. I had released a greatest hits album the next week. I had made millions off her tragedy. "You killed her," the creature said. It wasn't an accusation. It was just a statement of fact. "You traded her life for a platinum record. That is a bad deal, Thomas. That is a very bad deal." I wanted to vomit. I wanted to scream that it wasn't my fault, that it was the industry, that it was business. But in hell, excuses do not exist. In hell, you cannot spin the narrative. The truth is a heavy weight, and it was crushing me. The heat in the arena spiked. The crowd of invisible souls screamed louder. "We love you! We love you!" I looked past the creature, back toward the pit where the king was kneeling. The sight broke whatever heart I had left. He was still trying to get the crown off his hands. The molten gold was eating through his skin, exposing the bone. But the worst part was not the physical pain. It was the isolation. He was surrounded by millions of screaming fans, yet he was completely, utterly alone. He looked at me again. His eyes were pleading. He wasn't asking for water. He was asking for forgiveness. I realized then that hell is not just fire. Hell is getting exactly what you asked for, but without the grace of God to make it bearable. He had wanted to be the king. He had wanted the world to love him. Now, he had the love of the world, and it was burning him alive. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, right where my heart attack had started in the studio. But this time, It wasn't a blockage. It felt like something was being ripped out. The creature with the mirror stepped closer. "Do you remember the warehouse, Thomas?" The mirror swirled again. I saw myself at 20 years old. I was wearing my blue uniform. I was sweating. My hands were dirty. I was packing a box of records. I saw Arthur, the old man who worked next to me. I saw him hand me a sandwich during lunch break. I saw him smile. "Jesus loves you, son," Arthur said in the mirror. "Don't forget that." In the mirror, I saw my younger self roll his eyes. I saw myself mock him behind his back. I saw myself thinking, "I will never be like you. You are a nobody." The creature laughed. "Arthur is not here, Thomas. Arthur is in a place where the music never stops, but it is a different kind of music. You wanted to be a somebody. Well, look around. You are a VIP here." The stone had reached my chest. I could barely breathe. The weight of my own pride was suffocating me. I realized that the statues in the hallway, the ones I had seen earlier, were people just like me. They were people who had hardened their hearts against God so many times that they had finally become stone. I was becoming one of them. I was going to be a statue in the hallway of the damned, frozen forever in a pose of arrogance, looking at an empty pedestal where my success used to be. The terror of that thought is something I cannot describe to you in English. It was a cold, black panic. I wasn't afraid of the pain anymore. I was afraid of the permanence. I was afraid of being stuck forever. "Please," I whispered. My voice was barely a squeak. "I don't want this." The creature leaned in, its face of raw skin inches from mine. It smelled of sulfur and expensive cologne, the smell of my own office. "You don't want this? But you worked so hard for it. You sacrificed your marriage for it. You sacrificed your children for it. You sacrificed Sarah for it. This is your retirement package, Thomas. You earned it." It reached out a finger and touched the center of my forehead. The skin there instantly turned to stone. I couldn't move my head. I could only move my eyes. I was locked in place. I was a statue. But I was still conscious. That is the cruelty of it. You don't sleep. You don't lose your mind. You are fully aware. You are trapped inside the monument you built. I stood there, a stone man in a suit, while the creature walked away. It walked toward the pit where the king was suffering. It started to mock him, holding the mirror up to his face so he could see his own ruin. I was alone. I stood there for what felt like 100 years. Time in hell is not like time here. There are no clocks. There is no sun. There is just the relentless pounding rhythm of suffering. I had time to think. I thought about every sermon I had ignored. I thought about every time I drove past a church and felt a tug in my heart, only to turn up the radio. I thought about the Bible my mother gave me, the one that sat on my bookshelf, gathering dust, used only as a prop to show people I was a good man. I realized that salvation had been within my reach every single day. It was right there. It was free. I didn't have to work for it. I didn't have to pack boxes for it. I didn't have to become a director for it. It was a gift, and I had thrown the gift in the trash to chase a plastic crown. The screaming in the arena changed. It wasn't just, "We love you" anymore. The crowd started chanting something else. "Worship me! Worship me!" The sound vibrated through my stone legs. It was the sound of pure, unadulterated pride. It was the song of Lucifer, and I realized that I had been singing that song my whole life. Every time I took credit for something I didn't do, I was singing it. Every time I looked down on a warehouse packer, I was singing it. I looked at the king in the pit. He had fallen face down into the embers. The gold crown was heavy on his head, pushing his face into the fire. He wasn't moving. He was broken. And I felt a tear. It was impossible. I was made of stone. Statues don't cry. But I felt it. A hot, burning tear formed in the corner of my eye. It was the first real thing I had felt in 20 years. It wasn't a tear of self-pity. It was a tear of repentance. I wasn't crying because I was in pain. I was crying because I had been so wrong. I was crying because I had wasted the breath God gave me, The tear rolled down my stone cheek. It burned like acid. As it rolled down, I felt a crack. A tiny hairline fracture appeared in the stone casing of my chest. I focused on that tear. I focused on the sorrow. I didn't try to be the director. I didn't try to be the boss. I just let myself be Thomas, the boy who used to pack boxes, the boy who used to know that he was small. I am sorry, I thought. I couldn't speak, but I thought it with every ounce of my will. I am so sorry. The chanting in the arena seemed to falter for a second. The demons didn't like that thought. The atmosphere shifted. The air grew heavier, trying to crush the repentance out of me. They wanted my pain, but they did not want my sorrow. Pain feeds hell. Sorrow, true, godly sorrow, is poison to it. The creature with the mirror snapped its head around. It looked at me from across the pit. It knew. It sensed the change. It started running back toward me. It moved with a jerky, unnatural speed, like a spider. It wanted to stop me. It wanted to seal the crack before it could grow. I knew I had only seconds. I couldn't move my arms. I couldn't move my legs. But I could move my soul. I had to make a choice. I could stay a statue forever, proud and hard, or I could break. To break meant to admit I was a failure. To break meant to admit that my whole life was a lie. It was the hardest thing a successful man can do. But I looked at the king one last time. I saw the futility of his crown, and I chose to break. If this story is speaking to you, if something inside your heart is stirring, stay with me and take a moment to subscribe here to the channel. This is not just a video. This is an encounter with God. The creature did not reach me in time to stop the tear, but it reached me in time to punish me for it. It slammed into me with the force of a freight train. The impact shattered the stone that had been encasing my legs, but it did not set me free. Instead, the stone shattered into jagged shards that cut into my spiritual flesh. I fell backward onto the burning floor of the arena. The creature was on top of me instantly. Its suit of raw human skin was slippery with sweat and blood. Its face, that smooth, featureless mask, hovered inches from mine. "You do not cry here," it shrieked. The voice was like a saw cutting through bone. "There is no repentance here. There is only payment. You owe a debt, Thomas. You owe a debt." It grabbed me by the throat. Its fingers were like branding irons. I could smell my own skin burning. It smelled like barbecue. It was a sick, sweet smell that made my stomach churn. "Get up!" the demon commanded. "Get up and do your job." It dragged me to my feet. My legs were trembling, bleeding from the stone shards embedded in them. The demon shoved me toward the pit where the king was kneeling. "Look at him," the demon yelled. "He is losing his audience. He is losing his appeal. Fix him." I stumbled to the edge of the pit. The heat was ferocious. It singed the hair off my arms. I looked down at the man the world called the king. He was in a worse state than before. The molten gold from the crown had dripped down his neck, fusing his chin to his chest. He was hunched over, his white suit now black with soot and ash. He was rocking back and forth. It was a rhythmic, desperate motion, and he was trying to sing. I leaned in, trying to hear above the roar of the invisible crowd. The crowd was still screaming, "Worship me!" But underneath that, I heard a melody. It was a melody I knew. It wasn't a rock and roll song. It wasn't a pop hit. It was an old gospel hymn, "Precious Lord, take my hand." He was trying to sing it. He was trying to call out to the only one who could save him. He was trying to say the name of Jesus. But every time he opened his mouth to form the holy words, a torrent of gold coins and cheap plastic trinkets poured out. Keychains, bobbleheads, miniature statues of himself. They vomited out of his throat, choking him, cutting his mouth. He gagged, he coughed. He looked up at me with eyes that were red from weeping. He pointed to his throat. He wanted to sing praises, but he had sold his voice to the world. And now, the world was all he could produce. The demon standing next to me laughed. "He wants to be a choir boy now. A little late for that, don't you think, Mr. Director? He had a gift, a beautiful gift from the Creator. And what did he do with it? He shook his hips. He popped pills. He became a god of flesh. The demon shoved a clipboard into my hands. It was made of red-hot iron. The paper on it was actually a sheet of dried skin. "Rebrand him," the demon ordered. "He's pathetic. Look at him. He's weak. The fans in the other sections of hell are getting bored. They want the king. They want the swagger. Give them what they want." I held the burning clipboard. My hands were blistering, but I couldn't drop it. It was glued to my skin. "I can't," I whispered. "I can't do that anymore." "You did it for 20 years, the demon roared. "You took addicts and made them heroes. You took adulterers and made them icons. Do it again. Write the press release. Tell the underworld that the king is back." I looked at the clipboard. Words started to appear on the skin paper, written in blood. They were my own thoughts, my own marketing strategies. Headline, "The Eternal Tour." Tagline, "He burns for you." I felt a wave of nausea. This was my profession. This was what I was good at. I was a marketing director. I knew how to spin the truth. But here the spin was a torture device. I looked at the king again. He had stopped trying to sing. He was just staring at the floor, defeated. The crowd of invisible souls was getting angry. They started throwing things, not physical things, but memories. I saw flashes of light hitting the king. Each flash was a memory of a fan. A woman in 1956 screaming his name until she fainted. A man in 1970 buying a ticket instead of buying food for his family. A teenager in a bedroom praying to a poster of the king instead of praying to God. Each memory hit him like a whip. He flinched. He groaned. These were the prayers of his idolaters, and they were burning him. I realized then that fame is not just attention. Fame is a transaction. When you accept the worship of men, you are accepting a weight that only God can carry. Humans are not designed to be worshipped. We are designed to be worshippers. When we take that glory for ourselves, it crushes us. The king was being crushed by the weight of millions of souls who had loved him more than they loved the truth. "Help him!" the demon screamed at me, striking me across the back with a whip made of microphone cables. "Make him dance!" I fell to my knees beside the pit. "I can't!" I sobbed. "I don't want to sell this anymore. It's a lie. It's all a lie." The demon grabbed my hair and pulled my head back. "Oh, now you have a conscience. Where was this conscience when you signed that contract in 1998? Where was this conscience when you told that young band to sell their souls for a spot on the charts?" The demon snapped its fingers. The floor of the arena opened up slightly. "Look," it hissed. I looked down into the fissure. Below the arena, there was another level. It was a vast, dark warehouse. It looked exactly like the distribution center where I had worked as a warehouse packer. But the boxes weren't filled with records. They were filled with people. They were packed tight, shoulder to shoulder, in clear plastic crates. They were suffocating. They were clawing at the plastic, trying to breathe. "Who are they?" I asked, trembling. "The consumers," the demon said with a sneer. "The fans, the ones who bought what you sold. You packaged the lie, Thomas, and they bought it. Now they are in storage, waiting for their turn in the fire." I saw faces I recognized. I saw neighbors. I saw people I had gone to high school with. They were packed in boxes like merchandise. "You see," the demon whispered in my ear, "marketing is a powerful thing. You didn't just sell music. You sold a lifestyle. You sold rebellion. You sold lust. You sold the idea that life is about pleasure. And these people believed you. They followed your campaigns right into the pit. The guilt hit me harder than the whip. I had blood on my hands. Not the blood of a murder, but the blood of souls. I had led these people here. I was their shepherd, and I had led them to the slaughterhouse. I looked back at the king. He was looking at the warehouse too. He saw the fans. He saw the people who had made him rich. And he began to weep blood. "I didn't know," he moaned. His voice was raspy, cutting through the sound of the coins. "I didn't know it would end like this." "You knew!" the demon shouted at him. "You knew the gospel. You knew the songs of the church. You chose the stage over the altar." The demon turned back to me. "And you, Thomas. You knew too. You had Arthur." The mention of Arthur's name made the demon flinch. It hated that name. Arthur. I whispered. "He is not here," the demon shrieked. "Stop saying his name." But I couldn't stop thinking about him. The old man with the calloused hands, the man who was a nobody in Nashville but a giant in the kingdom of God. I remembered how he used to sing while he worked. He didn't sing for applause. He sang for an audience of one. Arthur was free. I looked at the king. He was a prisoner. I looked at myself. I was a prisoner. The difference between Arthur and us was not talent. The king had more talent in his little finger than Arthur had in his whole body. The difference was who they worshipped. The heat in the arena began to rise again. The walls, which were made of amplifiers and speakers, began to glow red. A low hum started to vibrate through the floor. It was the sound of feedback, a screeching high-pitched noise that drilled into my teeth. "Time for the encore!" the demon announced with a cruel grin. The speakers exploded with noise. It wasn't music. It was a distorted, demonic version of the king's greatest hits. The drums sounded like gunshots. The guitars sounded like screams. "Dance!" the demon commanded the king. The king tried to resist. He planted his feet. He grabbed his knees. He didn't want to perform. He wanted to rest. He wanted to hide. But the floor beneath him became electrified. Blue bolts of lightning shot up through his legs. His body jerked. His limbs snapped into position. He was being forced to move. He was being forced to gyrate. He was being forced to be the king again. It was grotesque. He was like a puppet on strings made of fire. He danced, but his face was a mask of agony. He spun, but his eyes were begging for death. "Look at him!" the demon yelled at me. "This is what you sold. This is the product. Isn't it beautiful?" I covered my eyes. "Stop it. Please stop it." "You can't stop the show, Thomas," the demon laughed. "The show must go on, forever and ever." The demon grabbed my hand, the one holding the burning clipboard, and forced me to start writing. "Write it down," it hissed. "Record the performance. You are the director. Make sure the lighting is right. Make sure the angle is good." My hand moved against my will. The pen carved into the skin paper. I was documenting the torture of a human soul, and I was treating it like a business transaction. Note: subject displays high energy. Audience engagement is at maximum. Recommend increasing the voltage. I stared at the words I had just written. I hadn't thought them. The sin in me had written them. The old Thomas. The marketing director Thomas. He was still in there. He was still trying to survive by pleasing the boss. I realized then that I was two people. There was the terrified soul who wanted salvation, and there was the professional who wanted to succeed. And in hell, the professional was the one in charge. I had to kill the professional. I had to kill the director. "No," I said. The demon stopped laughing. "What did you say?" "I said no," I said, louder this time. I looked at the clipboard. I ripped the skin paper off and threw it into the pit. It fluttered down and landed on the king's shoulder, burning to ash. "I resign," I said. The demon stared at me. Its face rippled. "You cannot resign. You are under contract for eternity." "I breach the contract," I said. My voice was shaking, but I felt a strange power rising in my chest. It wasn't my power. It was the memory of Arthur's voice. "I don't work for you. I don't work for the label. I don't work for the fans." The demon hissed. "Then who do you work for, slave?" I looked at the king dancing in the fire, a prisoner of his own fame. I looked at the warehouse of souls below us. I looked at the dark, hopeless sky of hell. "I want to work for the carpenter," I said. The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. Carpenter. The demon recoiled as if I had thrown acid in its face. "Silence! That profession is forbidden here." "He was a carpenter," I shouted. "He built things that lasted. He didn't build idols. He built a bridge out of this place." The king stopped dancing. The electricity stopped. The music cut out. For a second, there was total silence in the arena. The king looked up at me. He wasn't crying anymore. He was listening. "He can hear you," the demon whispered, terrified. "Don't let him hear you." But I didn't stop. "He is the king," I yelled down into the pit. "You are not the king. You are just a man. There is only one king, and he wore a crown of thorns, not a crown of gold." The king in the pit fell to his knees. He ripped the golden crown from his head. It tore his skin, but he didn't care. He threw it into the fire. "Yes!" the king screamed. His voice was clear. No coins came out, no plastic, just a raw, human voice. "He is the king!" The moment he said it, the arena shook. The speakers on the walls exploded. The amplifiers burst into flames. The illusion of the concert hall began to crumble. The demon shrieked in a language I didn't understand. It lunged at me, its claws extended, aiming for my throat. It wanted to rip my voice box out. It wanted to silence the truth. But I didn't back down. I had spent my life selling lies. Now, facing a demon in the pit of hell, I was finally ready to sell the truth. "Jesus!" I screamed. The demon hit me. I flew backward. I felt my ribs crack. I felt the breath leave my body. I tumbled across the stone floor, rolling away from the pit. I landed hard against a wall. I was broken. I was bleeding. The pain was blinding. But as I lay there, gasping for air that smelled of sulfur, I saw something. The mirror. The demon had dropped it when I screamed the name. It was lying on the floor, cracked down the middle. I crawled toward it. I wanted to see my face one last time. I wanted to see if the shark was still there. I looked into the shattered glass. I didn't see the marketing director. I didn't see the suit. I saw a boy, a 20-year-old boy in a dusty blue uniform. I saw the warehouse packer. I saw Thomas. I was stripped bare. The idols were gone. The career was gone. The pride was gone. "God," I whispered into the cracked glass. "I'm just a packer. I'm just a packer. Please, pack me up and take me home." The demon was recovering. It was standing up, shaking its head. It let out a roar of pure rage and started sprinting toward me. It was going to tear me apart. It was going to shred my soul until there was nothing left but confetti. I closed my eyes. I didn't try to fight. I didn't try to run. I just surrendered. "I am yours," I whispered to the darkness. "Not theirs. Yours." And then the floor dropped out from under me. I did not land in fire. I landed in a chair. It was a comfortable chair, high-backed, leather, ergonomic. It was the kind of chair I used to sit in for 12 hours a day while I decided which songs would go to #1 and which artists would be dropped. I opened my eyes. I was no longer in the arena. The screaming of the crowd was gone. The heat of the molten gold was gone. The smell of burning flesh was gone. I was in a room that looked exactly like a high-end executive suite. The walls were lined with mahogany. The carpet was thick and plush. There was a large polished oak desk in front of me. On the desk, there was a single glass of water and a remote control. For a second, a foolish, desperate part of my brain thought I had woken up. I thought the arena was a nightmare caused by the heart attack. I thought I was back in Nashville, back in control, back to being the marketing director. I reached for the glass of water. My throat was parched from the smoke of the pit. I needed to drink. But as my hand touched the glass, the water boiled. It didn't boil with heat. It boiled with blood. The clear liquid turned dark red in an instant, bubbling over the rim, staining the oak desk. The smell that rose from it was the smell of iron and decay. I jerked my hand back. "Refreshments are not served here, Thomas," a voice said from the shadows in the corner of the room. I spun the chair around. Standing there was the creature, the one with the suit made of skin, the one that looked like me. It was holding the cracked mirror, but it wasn't looking at it. It was looking at me. "Where am I?" I whispered. "You are in the editing room," the creature said. It walked over to the wall. It touched a panel, and the mahogany slid away to reveal a massive screen. It was the size of a cinema screen. "We have reviewed the raw footage of your performance in the pit. The management is not impressed. You showed weakness. You showed empathy. The creature sat on the edge of the desk, crossing its legs. It looked so casual, so corporate. It was mimicking my body language perfectly. "We need to go over your portfolio," the creature said. "We need to understand why a man who was so successful at selling lies is suddenly having trouble with the program." It pointed the remote at the screen. The screen flickered to life. It wasn't a movie. It was a memory. I saw a kitchen. It was my mother's kitchen. The linoleum was yellow and peeling. There was a pot of coffee on the stove. I saw myself sitting at the table. I was 30 years old. I was wearing a sharp suit, checking my pager. My mother was sitting across from me. She looked frail. Her hands were shaking as she held her Bible. "Thomas," she said in the video, "I don't care about the money. I don't care about the house you want to buy me. I just want to know that you are right with Jesus." In the video, I laughed. It was a cruel, dismissive laugh. "Mom, please. I don't have time for fairy tales. Jesus didn't pay for this suit. I did. Jesus didn't get me the promotion. I did. When you pray, you are just talking to the ceiling." I saw my mother flinch. I saw the light go out of her eyes. I saw her close the Bible and look down at her hands. "Stop it," I said to the creature. "I don't want to watch this." "But this is your best work," the creature sneered. "Look at the confidence. Look at the arrogance. You destroyed her faith in you with 3 sentences. That is efficiency, Thomas. That is executive leadership." The scene changed. I was in a restaurant, a very expensive steakhouse in downtown Nashville. I was having dinner with a client. He was a young rock star, covered in tattoos, full of rebellion. He looked at me across the table. He looked scared. "Thomas," he said, "I'm scared. I feel like I'm losing my mind. I feel like there's something dark following me. Do you think God is mad at me?" In the video, I swirled my wine glass. I looked him in the eye and I lied. "There is no such thing as God, kid. There is only energy. You are just feeling the energy of the crowd. Embrace it. Let it take you over. If you start thinking about God, you will lose your edge. And if you lose your edge, you lose your contract." The kid nodded. He trusted me. He drank his wine. 2 months later, that kid drove his car off a bridge. "You were his pastor," the creature whispered. "You were the high priest of the industry. He came to you for confession, and you gave him absolution in the name of the dollar. You sent him to his grave." I felt a weight pressing down on my chest, heavier than the stone in the hallway. This was the weight of truth. In the arena, the torture was physical. Here, the torture was clarity. I was seeing my life without the filter of my own justifications. I was seeing the damage I had caused. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked, tears streaming down my face. "I know I am a sinner. I know I belong here." "Because you need to understand the deal," the creature said. It stood up and walked toward me. "You are trying to claim repentance. You are trying to use the name. But look at the evidence, Thomas. You don't want God. You hate God. You spent 50 years fighting him. You spent 50 years mocking him. Do you really think you can just say a word and undo all of this?" It pointed at the screen. The images started flashing faster. Me throwing a gospel tract in the trash. Me firing a secretary because she wouldn't lie for me. Me cheating on my taxes. Me cheating on my wife. Me looking in the mirror and saying, "I am the greatest." "You are one of us," the creature hissed. "You are a self-made man. And this is the house you built." The room began to get hot. The mahogany walls started to warp. The carpet started to smoke. The illusion of the office was failing. The reality of hell was bleeding through. But this time the heat wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from inside me. It was the heat of my own shame. I looked at the creature. "I was wrong," I said. "Wrong." The creature laughed. "You were successful. You won. You have the trophies." "I lost," I said. "I lost everything that mattered." I looked at the glass of blood on the desk. I looked at the screen playing the reel of my failures. And I remembered something else. I remembered the warehouse packer days again. I remembered a day when I had cut my hand on a box. It was a deep cut. I was bleeding. Arthur, the old man, had come over with a first aid kit. He cleaned the wound. He bandaged it. "Blood is a powerful thing, Thomas," Arthur had said. "My blood just makes a mess. But his blood cleans the mess." I hadn't understood it then. I thought he was talking nonsense. But now, sitting in the office of my damnation, I understood. I didn't need a lawyer. I didn't need a new contract. I didn't need a marketing strategy. I needed a cleaning. I looked at the creature. "You are right. I did all those things. I mocked my mother. I killed that kid's hope. I worshipped myself. I am guilty. I am dirty." The creature smiled. It thought I was surrendering to the despair. It thought I was accepting my place in hell. "Good," the creature said. "Confession is the first step to integration. Now pick up the phone. We have work to do." It pointed to a phone on the desk. It was a black rotary phone. It started to ring. "Who is it?" I asked. "It's the industry," the creature said. "They need a new director. They need someone to run the Department of False Hope. You are the best candidate. Pick it up, Thomas. Accept your promotion." I looked at the phone. It was ringing loudly, a harsh mechanical sound that drilled into my skull. I knew what would happen if I picked it up. I would become like the creature. My skin would turn to leather. My face would disappear. I would become a suit without a soul. I would become a manager of hell, tormenting others for eternity. It was a tempting offer, to be a manager instead of a victim, to be the one holding the whip instead of the one feeling it. That is the final trap of hell. It offers you power if you agree to destroy yourself. I reached out my hand toward the phone. The creature's smile widened. It looked like a shark smelling blood, but my hand didn't grab the receiver. My hand went past the phone. My hand went to the remote control. "What are you doing?" the creature snapped. I pressed the off button. The screen went black. The image of my sins vanished. "I have seen enough," I said. "I don't need to watch the rerun. I lived it." I stood up. The chair fell backward. "I am not a director," I said. My voice was steady. "And I am not a manager." I looked down at my hands. They were the hands of a man who had typed emails and signed checks. But in my spirit I saw them as they really were, empty, stained. "I am a failure," I said. "I am a wretch. I am a sinner." The creature snarled. "Stop this humility. It is disgusting. Have some pride, man." "Pride is what brought me here," I said. "Pride is the elevator down. I am looking for the stairs up." "There are no stairs," the creature screamed. The walls of the office exploded. The mahogany shattered into splinters. The fire roared in. We were back in the void, suspended over the pit. "You belong to me." The creature lunged at me. It grabbed me by the shoulders. It was strong, incredibly strong. It shook me. "You cannot leave. You signed the deal. Every time you chose money over truth, you signed the deal. Every time you chose fame over life, you signed the deal." "I break the deal," I shouted. "You can't." "I can't," I admitted. I looked the demon in the eye. "You are right. I can't break it. I don't have the power. I am just a man. I am just dust." The demon paused, confused by my admission. "But," I whispered, and the air around us began to tremble. "I know someone who can break it." The demon's eyes, if it had eyes, widened in terror. It tried to cover my mouth with its hand. "Don't say it," it begged. "Don't say his name. It burns. It burns us." I pulled my head back. I didn't care about the pain. I didn't care about the fire. I only cared about the truth. "He is the breaker of chains," I yelled. "He is the Lion of Judah." The demon shrieked and let go of me. It backed away, shielding its face as if a bright light had suddenly appeared in the room. "He bought me," I cried out. "He bought me with a price. I am not your property. I am his property." The room dissolved completely. The desk, the chair, the screen, it all melted away into black smoke. I was falling again, but this time I wasn't falling down. I was falling up. I felt a sensation of rushing wind. It wasn't the hot wind of the pit. It was a cool wind. It felt like the air before a thunderstorm. It smelled of ozone and rain. The demon tried to grab my ankle. "Come back!" it screamed. "You haven't finished your shift!" I kicked at it. "My shift is over!" I shouted. "I quit!" The demon fell away into the darkness, screaming in frustration. I was rising, faster and faster. I passed the level of the arena. I saw the king one last time. He was looking up. He saw me rising. He didn't look angry. He looked hopeful. He lifted a hand, waving goodbye. "Tell them," he shouted. His voice was faint, swallowed by the distance. "Tell them the music doesn't matter. Tell them only the soul matters." I watched him disappear into the red glow. My heart broke for him. He was a prisoner of his own legend, but I was being set free by a legend that was actually true. I continued to rise. The grey hallway of statues blurred past me. I saw the frozen people. I saw the man checking his watch. I saw the woman clutching her purse. They were still there, stuck in their eternal wait. "Wake up!" I yelled at them as I flew past. "Wake up! The pedestal is empty. Look up!" A few of the statues seemed to vibrate. A few eyes shifted, but I was moving too fast to see if they broke free. I was heading toward a light. It wasn't a tunnel. It was a crack in the ceiling of the underworld. It looked like a star. I reached out my hand. I stretched my fingers toward the light. "Jesus," I whispered, "I am coming. I am dirty, but I am coming." The darkness tried to hold me back. It felt like sticky tar. It grabbed my clothes. It grabbed my hair. It whispered every doubt I had ever had. "You are not good enough. You are a hypocrite. You are just scared. You will go back to your old life." "Lies!" I shouted against the wind. "I am not good enough. That is why I need him. I am a hypocrite. That is why I need truth. I am scared. That is why I need peace." The higher I rose, the more the lies fell away. I realized that salvation is not about being perfect. It is about realizing you are drowning and grabbing the only hand that can pull you out. I had spent my life trying to learn how to swim in a sea of money. I had drowned. Now I was being rescued. The light grew brighter. It was blinding. It was pure white, hotter than the fire of hell, but it didn't burn. It purified. I felt the soot of the pit stripping off my skin. I felt the expensive suit dissolving. I felt the title of marketing director evaporating like mist. I was becoming Thomas again. Just Thomas. And then I hit the barrier. It was like hitting the surface of the water after being deep underwater. I broke through. The air changed instantly. The smell of sulfur was gone. The sound of screaming was gone. I heard a beep, 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 beep. It was a rhythmic, electronic sound. I felt something hard under my back. It wasn't stone. It was a mattress. I felt a burning sensation in my chest, but it wasn't a demon's claw. It was electricity. "Clear," someone shouted. My body jerked. I gasped. A huge, desperate lungful of air rushed into me. It tasted like antiseptic and plastic. I opened my eyes. I came back screaming. It was not a scream of pain, although my chest felt like it had been kicked by a horse. It was a scream of sheer, absolute terror. I was thrashing on the bed. I was fighting the hands that were holding me down. I was trying to claw the air, trying to grab onto something solid, something that wasn't made of smoke and fire. "Hold him down!" a voice shouted. "Get the sedative!" "No!" I roared. My voice was hoarse, raspy, like I had been swallowing ash for 1,000 years. "Don't put me to sleep! Don't let me close my eyes! If I close my eyes, I go back!" I was terrified of the dark. I was terrified that this hospital room was just a trick, just another level of the torture, like the fake office with the demon. I grabbed the wrist of the person leaning over me. It was a nurse, a young woman. I squeezed her arm so hard her eyes went wide. "Is this real?" I begged her. "Are you real? Or are you a statue? Are you stone?" She looked at the doctor, scared. "He's hallucinating," she said. "Oxygen deprivation." "I am not hallucinating," I yelled. "I saw them. I saw the statues. I saw the king. He is burning. He is burning right now." The doctor, a tall man with grey hair and tired eyes, leaned in close to my face. He shone a bright light into my eyes. The light hurt. but I welcomed the pain. Pain meant I was alive. Pain meant I wasn't numb. "Mr. Miller," the doctor said firmly, "listen to my voice. You had a massive cardiac arrest. You were clinically dead for 8 minutes. We got you back. You are in St. Thomas Hospital. You are safe." Safe. The word sounded alien to me. I started to cry. I don't mean a few tears. I mean I broke. I sobbed like a child who has been lost in the woods for days and finally sees his father's house. I wailed. The sound coming out of me was ugly. It was the sound of a soul that had touched the edge of the abyss and been pulled back by a thread. "Thank you," I choked out. "Thank you. Thank you." I wasn't thanking the doctor. I was looking up at the ceiling, past the fluorescent lights, past the roof of the hospital, past the sky. I was thanking the carpenter. They sedated me anyway. They had to. My heart rate was too high. As the drugs took hold, I fought them. I forced my eyes to stay open until the very last second. I whispered the name Jesus over and over again, like an anchor, holding onto it, so I wouldn't drift back to the arena. When I woke up again, it was night. The room was dim. The machines next to my bed were beeping softly. Beep. Beep. The same rhythm I had heard when I first crashed back into my body. I lay there, afraid to move. I wiggled my toes. I felt the sheets. Cotton. Cool, crisp cotton. Not stone, not fire. I looked at my hands. They were pale. There were IV tubes taped to the back of my left hand. I turned them over. No burns, no gold fused to my skin, no pen made of bone. Just my hands. But they looked different to me. They looked borrowed. I realized then that these hands didn't belong to me anymore. The Thomas who owned these hands had died on the studio floor. That Thomas, the marketing director, the arrogance, the pride, he was gone. I was someone else. I was a tenant in a body that had been given a second lease. The door to my room opened quietly. A woman walked in. It was Linda, my wife. I hadn't truly looked at Linda in 10 years. I had looked past her. I had looked through her. I had seen her as a fixture in my house, someone to manage the bills and the dinner parties while I conquered the world. She looked tired. Her eyes were red. She was holding her purse tight against her chest, like a shield. She was expecting the man she knew. She was expecting the man who would be angry about the inconvenience, the man who would be demanding his phone, the man who would be asking about the resurrection tour. She walked to the side of the bed. She didn't touch me. She was afraid to touch me. "Tom," she whispered. I looked at her, and for the first time in a decade, I really saw her. But I saw more than just her face. I saw her spirit. It was like the layer of the world had been peeled back. I saw the weight she was carrying. I saw a heavy grey chain wrapped around her shoulders. It was the chain of rejection. My rejection. I had put that chain there. Every time I ignored her, I added a link. Every time I chose the office over our home, I added a link. She was carrying a burden that was crushing her, just like the statues in the hallway were crushed by their own idolatry. I started to weep again. Linda looked confused. She had never seen me cry, not when my parents died, not when we lost the baby years ago. I was the man of stone. "Does it hurt?" she asked, reaching out a trembling hand. "Do you want me to call the nurse?" I shook my head. "No," I croaked. "It doesn't hurt. I mean, yes, it hurts, but not here." I touched my chest. "Here." I touched my soul. I reached out and grabbed her hand. Her skin was warm. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever felt. "Linda," I said, "I am so sorry." She froze. She didn't know what to do with those words. They were foreign words in our marriage. "I saw it, Linda," I whispered. "I saw where I was going. I saw the truth." She sat down on the edge of the bed. "What did you see, Tom?" "The doctor said you were gone for a long time." I saw the king, I said. I saw the gold. It burns, Linda. It all burns. The records, the awards, the money. It's all fuel for the fire. She looked at me like I was delirious, but she didn't pull her hand away. I have been a fool, I said. I have been building a kingdom of dust, and I almost took you with me. I looked at the chain I saw around her shoulders. Forgive me, I said. Please, Linda, I know I don't deserve it. I know I have been a monster, but I need you to forgive me. I need to break the chain. She started to cry then, silent tears running down her face. She nodded. She didn't understand everything, but she understood that the man in the bed was not the man who had left the house that morning. Just then, my phone started to buzz. It was sitting on the bedside table. Linda must have brought it. The screen lit up. The name on the screen was CEO, Urgent. The buzzing sound went through me like an electric shock. It sounded exactly like the demon's laugh. Bzzzt. Bzzzt. I looked at the phone. It was a black rectangle, a portal. Through that phone, the old world was trying to reach me. The world of lies, the world of selling a religion. Do you want me to answer it? Linda asked, wiping her eyes. It's been ringing all night. They are worried about the press release for the new album. I looked at the phone and then I looked at the window. I saw my reflection in the dark glass. I didn't see the marketing director. I saw a frightened, broken man with tubes in his nose, and behind that reflection, I saw the shadow of the warehouse packer. The boy who knew better. No, I said. Don't answer it. But it's the CEO, Linda said. She was conditioned to fear that phone just as much as I was. I don't work for him anymore, I said. The words felt like cool water on my tongue. I have a new boss. I reached over, my hand shaking, and I picked up the phone. It felt heavy, like a brick of lead. I remembered the clipboard in hell. I remembered the demon forcing my hand to write. I pressed the button on the side of the phone and held it down. Tom, what are you doing? Linda asked. I am turning off the noise, I said. I held the button until the screen went black. Then I handed the phone to Linda. Take it, I said. Throw it away. Bury it. I don't care. I never want to hear that ringtone again. She took the phone, looking at me with wide eyes. But your contacts, your schedule, the tour. The tour is cancelled, I said. The resurrection is cancelled. There is only one resurrection, Linda, and we can't sell tickets to it. I lay back on the pillows. I was exhausted. My body felt like it had been run over by a truck. But for the first time in 20 years, the coldness in my chest was gone. The block of ice was melted, but the fear wasn't gone. It had just changed. I wasn't afraid of losing my job. I was afraid of the people outside that door. I knew that soon the doctors would leave. The visitors would come, the executives, the lawyers, the stars. They would come into this room with their flowers and their fake smiles, and they would try to pull me back. They would try to put the stone suit back on me. They were the statues, and I had to live among them. Linda, I said, gripping her hand again, I need you to do something for me. Anything, she said. Do you still have it? I asked. The Bible, the one my mother gave me, the one I told you to put in the attic. She nodded. I didn't put it in the attic, Tom. It's in my nightstand. Of course it was. She had been holding on to the truth while I was busy selling lies. Bring it to me, I said. Please. I need to read it. I need to know what Arthur knew. I need to know how to stay free. I'll bring it tomorrow, she promised. No, I said, feeling a panic rising in my throat. Not tomorrow, now. I can't be in this room without it. The shadows. They are too long in here. She stood up. She kissed my forehead. I'll be right back. I won't be long. She left the room. I was alone again. The silence of the hospital room pressed in on me. It wasn't the heavy silence of the studio. It was a waiting silence. I looked at the empty chair where Linda had been sitting, and then I looked at the corner of the room. There was nothing there, just shadows. But I knew what was hiding in the shadows of this world. I knew that the demons didn't just live in hell. They walked the halls of hospitals. They sat in boardrooms. They stood on stages. I closed my eyes and tried to pray. I didn't know the fancy prayers anymore. I didn't know the religious words I used to put in press releases. Jesus, I whispered. Don't let me go. I am weak. I am so weak. If they come for me, if the money comes for me, I might fall. Hold me. Please, hold me. Suddenly the door opened again. I opened my eyes, expecting Linda. It wasn't Linda. It was a man in a sharp Italian suit. He was holding a bouquet of expensive lilies. He had a smile that showed all of his teeth but none of his soul. It was Marcus, my protégé. The young man I had trained to be just like me. He was the junior vice president. He was the one who had nodded the loudest when I said we were selling a religion. Tom, he boomed, his voice too loud for the small room. You scared us, buddy. You really scared us. The stock dropped 2 points when the ambulance took you away. He walked over and tossed the flowers on the table. He didn't look at the monitors. He didn't look at my pale face. He looked at the empty spot where my phone should be. Where's your comms? He asked. We need to approve the artwork for the single. The press is going crazy. They are saying you died. We need to spin this. The director returns from the brink to launch the greatest show on earth. It writes itself, Tom. It writes itself. I looked at Marcus. I saw the suit, but I also saw the skin underneath. I saw the rot. I saw the demon standing behind him, whispering in his ear, just like it used to whisper in mine. I saw a statue in the making, and I knew that this was going to be the hardest fight of my life. Hell was a place of punishment, but Earth is the battlefield, and the enemy had just sent his soldier into my room. Get out, I whispered. Marcus laughed. Good one, Tom. Always the joker. Now seriously, I have the contract here for the venue change. I said get out, I screamed. The monitors started beeping faster. Beep, 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 beep. Marcus stopped laughing. He looked at me with cold, dead eyes. You need to rest, Tom. You're confused. I'll handle the account. I'll be the director until you're better. You don't understand, I said, shaking. There is no director. There is only the king, and you are not him. Marcus stared at me for a long moment. Then he sneered. It was the same sneer the demon had given me. You're losing it, old man, he said. Get well soon. The show must go on. He turned and walked out. I lay there, trembling. I had won the first battle, but I knew the war was just beginning. I needed that Bible. I needed the truth, because without it, I was just a warehouse packer trying to fight a giant with bare hands. The light was bright, but it wasn't the holy fire. It was a fluorescent tube light on a ceiling tile. I was back. When the door opened again, I flinched. I expected Marcus to come back. I expected the lawyers. I expected the demons in Italian suits to force a pen into my hand and make me sign my soul away for another fiscal year. But it was Linda. She looked small in the doorway. She was clutching a black book to her chest, like it was a life preserver in a storm. It was the Bible my mother had given me 30 years ago. I recognized the cracked leather cover. I recognized the gold lettering that had faded with time. I had told her to hide it. I had told her it didn't fit the aesthetic of our modern glass and steel house. I had told her that guests would think we were weak if they saw it on the coffee table. Now that book looked like the only strong thing in the universe. I brought it, she whispered. She walked over to the bed, her steps hesitant. She was afraid of me. She was afraid of the man who had yelled at her for 20 years. She didn't know yet that the man she feared had died on a studio floor. Give it to me, I said. My voice broke. I reached out my hand, the hand that used to sign contracts worth millions, the hand that used to hold whiskey glasses and microphones. It was shaking. She placed the book in my hands. It was heavy. Not heavy like the stone in hell, not heavy like the guilt. It was heavy with truth. It felt solid. It felt like holding a brick of pure gold. I ran my fingers over the cover. I could feel the texture of the leather. I could smell the old paper. It smelled like my mother's house. It smelled like safety. I haven't opened this since the day she gave it to me, I admitted, looking at Linda. I told her I would read it every day. I lied. You were busy, Tom, Linda said softly, trying to excuse me. That was Linda, always trying to soften the blow, always trying to cover my sins. No, I said sharply. I wasn't busy. I was lost. There is a difference. I tried to open the book. This is the part that is hard to explain to people who haven't been where I have been. Physically, opening a book is easy. It takes no effort. But spiritually? In that hospital room, with the shadows of my past lurking in the corners, opening that Bible felt like lifting 1,000 pounds. My hands cramped. A sudden wave of nausea hit me. A voice in my head, the same voice that had spoken to me in the fake office, screamed, "Don't open it. It will burn you. It will judge you. You are too dirty for that book." The enemy was terrified. He knew that if I opened that book, his hold on me was broken forever. He knew that the word of God is a sword, and he didn't want to be cut. "Help me," I whispered to Linda. "I can't. My hands." She didn't ask questions. She saw the sweat on my forehead. She saw the struggle in my eyes. She reached out and placed her hands over mine. Her hands were warm. They were the hands of a faithful woman, a woman who had prayed for a husband who didn't deserve her. Together we pulled the cover open. The pages fell open. I didn't choose the verse. I believe the Spirit of God chose it for me. I looked down at the page. The text was small, but my eyes locked onto a passage in the Psalms. Psalm 115. I began to read it aloud. My voice was raspy, filling the sterile silence of the hospital room. Their idols are silver and gold, the work of men's hands. I stopped. The breath caught in my throat. I looked at Linda. "That's what I did," I whispered. "I made them, silver and gold. I made them with these hands." I looked back at the page and continued reading. "They have mouths, but they speak not. Eyes have they, but they see not. They have ears, but they hear not. Noses have they, but they smell not." I started to tremble. The tears came hot and fast, blurring the words. "The statues," I choked out. "Linda, the statues in the hallway, I saw them. They were frozen. They were looking, but they couldn't see. They were listening, but they couldn't hear. They were dead inside the stone." I forced myself to read the next verse. It was the sentence that shattered me completely. "They that make them are like unto them. So is everyone that trusteth in them." I dropped the Bible on my chest and covered my face with my hands. I wailed. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated grief. The Bible knew. Thousands of years ago, before I was born, before Nashville was built, before the music industry existed, God knew. He knew that if you worship dead things, you become a dead thing. He knew that if you chase the glory of man, you turn into stone. I became like them, I sobbed. I became a statue, Linda. I couldn't feel anything. I couldn't love you. I couldn't love God. I was just a shell. I was just a marketing director in a suit, but inside I was granite. Linda put her arms around me. She held me while I cried. She rocked me like a child. "It's okay," she whispered. "You're back now. You're back." "I'm not just back," I said, gasping for air. "I'm broken, and I need to stay broken. If I fix myself, I'll just build another idol. I need Jesus to be the one who holds me together." We sat there for a long time. The nurses didn't come in. The phone didn't ring. It was a holy moment. It was the moment where the contract with hell was officially torn up. But I knew that repentance isn't just crying. Repentance is action. You can cry all night, but if you wake up and go back to the pigsty, you haven't repented. You've just had an emotional episode. I wiped my face with the hospital sheet. I sat up. The monitors were still beeping, but my heart rate was steady now. The fear was gone. In its place was a cold, hard resolve. "Linda," I said, "I need you to bring me a pen and a notepad." She looked worried. "Tom, The doctor said no work, no stress. This isn't work, I said. This is freedom. She found a notepad in her purse and a cheap ballpoint pen. She handed them to me. I held the pen. It felt different than the pen of bone I had held in the pit. It was just plastic. It was light. I wrote the date at the top of the page. Then I wrote 2 words in big block letters. I resign. I didn't address it to the CEO. I didn't address it to the board of directors. I addressed it to the spirit of the age. Below that, I started to write. I didn't write a standard resignation letter. I didn't write about pursuing other opportunities or spending time with family. I wrote the truth. To whom it may concern, for 20 years I have sold you a lie. I told you that fame would fill the hole in your heart. I told you that music was a religion. I told you that the stars I managed were gods. I was wrong. There is only one God, and he does not need a marketing team. He does not need a tour bus. He does not need a spotlight. I have seen where the road of vanity ends. It ends in silence. It ends in fire. It ends in a place where the applause stops and the screaming begins. I cannot save you. The artists I represented cannot save you. Only Jesus Christ can save you. Effective immediately, I am leaving the industry. I am leaving the city. I am taking my name off the door. Do not look for me. I am going to find the life I lost. Signed, Thomas Miller, former idol maker, current servant of God. I put the pen down. My hand was cramping, but my soul felt lighter than air. What is that? Linda asked. That is my testimony, I said. I want you to mail it. Send it to the papers. Send it to the office. Send it to everyone. They will think you have lost your mind, Linda said quietly. She wasn't arguing. She was just stating a fact. She knew this world as well as I did. Let them, I said. I would rather be a fool for Christ than a king in hell. I looked at the Bible again. I picked it up. I turned to the New Testament. I wanted to find the name that had saved me. I found it in Philippians, that at the name of Jesus, every knee should bow, of things in heaven and things in earth and things under the earth. Under the earth, I whispered. I was there. I was under the earth. And even there the name has power. Even the demons have to bow. I looked at Linda. We have to leave Nashville. She looked up, surprised. Leave? But our house? Our friends? Your pension? It's all tainted, I said. I can't walk these streets anymore. Every billboard is an accusation. Every radio station is a reminder of my sin. I need to go somewhere quiet. I need to go somewhere where the only music is the wind and the birds. Where will we go? She asked. I don't know, I said. Maybe back to the country. Maybe to a small town where nobody knows who Thomas Miller is. I just want to be simple, Linda. I want to be a husband. I want to be a man who reads this book. She smiled. It was a real smile, one I hadn't seen in years. I would like that, she said. I would like that very much. Suddenly, the air in the room shifted. The shadows in the corner seemed to darken. The feeling of peace was interrupted by a sharp, cold spike of malice. The enemy wasn't going to let me go that easily. He had sent Marcus, and that had failed. Now he was coming himself. The lights in the hospital room flickered. The monitor next to my bed glitched, the screen turning static for a second. Did you see that? Linda asked, gripping my arm. I saw it, I said. I sat up straighter. He is angry. He lost a soldier. I felt a pressure on my chest. It wasn't a heart attack. It was a spiritual weight. It was the accuser. You think you can just leave? The voice wasn't audible, but it rang in my mind like a bell. You think you can erase the past? You have blood on your hands, Thomas. You have the blood of that girl, Sarah. You have the blood of the boy in the car. You belong to me. I closed my eyes. I didn't fight the voice with logic. I didn't fight it with excuses. I know, I said aloud. Linda looked at me, confused. What? I am talking to him, I said. I looked at the dark corner of the room. I know I have blood on my hands. I know I am guilty. I agree with you, devil. I deserve the fire. I deserve the stone. The pressure increased. The lights buzzed louder. But, I said, my voice rising, I am not standing on my record. I am standing on his record. I picked up the Bible and held it up like a shield. The blood of Jesus speaks a better word than the blood of Abel, I shouted. My sins are red like crimson, but he has made them white as snow. You cannot touch me. I am covered. The moment I said the word covered, the pressure vanished. The lights stopped flickering. The monitor went back to its steady rhythm. The room was still. I took a deep breath. I felt clean. It was a strange sensation. For years I had felt dirty, even in my $1,000 suits. Now, in a hospital gown covered in sweat, I felt clean. He's gone, I told Linda. He can't stay where the truth is spoken. Linda looked at me with awe. You're different, Tom. You sound like a preacher. I laughed. It was a weak, rusty laugh, but it was real. No, not a preacher, just a witness who saw the crime and saw the pardon. I looked out the window. The sun was starting to come up. The sky was turning purple and orange over the Nashville skyline. It was the same view I had from my office, but it looked different now. Before, the city looked like a playground. Now it looked like a harvest field. Linda, I said, open the curtains. She walked over and pulled the blinds open. The morning light flooded the room. It hit the Bible on my lap, illuminating the gold letters. I have a lot of work to do, I said. Not for the label, for him. What kind of work? She asked. I have to tell them, I said. I have to tell the fans. I have to tell the artists. I have to warn them. They are dancing on the edge of a volcano, and they think it's a party. I have to be the one to tell them it's a funeral. I looked at my hands again, the hands of a warehouse packer, the hands of a marketing director, and now the hands of a servant. I'm going to need a new resume, I joked softly. What will you put on it? Linda asked, smiling through her tears. I thought about it. I thought about the man I saw in the mirror in hell. I thought about the king burning in the pit. I thought about the carpenter who built a bridge out of the grave. Survivor, I said. Just write survivor. The door opened. The doctor walked in, looking at his clipboard. He looked surprised to see me sitting up, holding a Bible, with the curtains open. Mr. Miller, he said, you're awake. You look stable. I am more than stable, doctor, I said. I am saved. He looked at me over his glasses. Well, let's check your heart first. You can check it, I said, but you won't find what was there yesterday. The stone is gone. There is a heart of flesh in there now. The doctor checked my vitals. He looked puzzled. Your rhythm is normal. Your blood pressure is perfect. It's remarkable. Considering the trauma you went through, this is medically impossible. I have a great physician, I said. The doctor nodded slowly, not understanding, but accepting the miracle. We need to keep you for observation for a few days, he said. That's fine, I said. I have a lot of reading to do. I patted the Bible. As the doctor left, I turned to Linda. Get the letter ready. As soon as I get out of here, we are going to the post office. And then, we are going home. To the big house? She asked. No, I said. To the real home, the one where Jesus is the head of the table. The big house. We'll sell it. We'll give the money to the poor. We don't need it. We have treasure in heaven now. I leaned back against the pillow. I was tired, but I was at peace. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of dying, and more importantly, I wasn't afraid of living. I closed my eyes, not to sleep, but to pray. And as I prayed, I could hear a new song in my head. It wasn't a pop song. It wasn't a hit single. It was the song the warehouse packer used to hum. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. I smiled. I was finally singing the right song. I walked out of St. Thomas Hospital 3 days later. The automatic doors slid open, and the humid Nashville air hit my face. It smelled of exhaust fumes and hot asphalt, but to me it smelled like grace. For the first time in 20 years, I was breathing air that I did not take for granted. I stood on the sidewalk holding Linda's hand, and I just watched the cars go by. People were rushing. They were honking. They were stressed. They were chasing the wind. I used to be one of them. I used to be the fastest car in the lane. Now I was just a man standing still, grateful that my heart was beating a rhythm of life instead of a countdown to death. "Where do you want to go?" Linda asked. She was driving. She had taken the keys to my luxury sedan. I didn't want to drive it. I didn't even want to sit in the front seat. "Take me to the office," I said. She looked at me worried. "Tom, you promised. You said you were done." "I am done," I said gently. "But I have to bury the body. I have to go back one last time to make sure the marketing director is truly dead." We drove into the city. I looked up at the glass tower where I had spent half my life. It used to look like a monument to my success. Now it looked like a tombstone. It was a shiny, vertical coffin where souls went to die under fluorescent lights. I took the elevator up to the 40th floor. My stomach tightened as the numbers climbed. 10, 20, 30. This was the ascent I used to love. It was the rise to power. Now, it felt like I was being lifted onto a sacrificial altar. The doors opened. The receptionist, a young girl who was terrified of me, jumped up. "Mr. Miller, we didn't know you were coming back so soon. We have the conference room prepped for the strategy meeting." I smiled at her, a real smile. She blinked, confused. She had never seen me smile without a reason, without a strategy. "No meeting, Jessica," I said. "I'm just here to pick up a few things." I walked down the hallway. I passed the statues. I don't mean real statues. I mean my colleagues. I saw them in their offices, shouting into phones, typing furiously, stressing over numbers that would be forgotten in a week. They looked just like the stone figures I had seen in hell. They were frozen in poses of anxiety. They were worshipping the god of commerce. They were trapped in the gallery of the lost, and they didn't even know they were statues. I walked into my office. It was cold. It was pristine. The view of the city was breathtaking, but I closed the blinds. I didn't want to see the kingdom I used to rule. I grabbed a cardboard box from the supply closet. I started to pack. I picked up the photo of Linda. It was an old photo, taken before the money changed us. I put it in the box. I picked up my Bible. I put it in the box. Then I looked at the walls, the gold records, the platinum albums, the framed magazine covers with headlines I had written, "The King Returns," "The Voice of a Generation." God walked into the studio. I took one of the gold records off the wall. It was heavy. I looked at my reflection in the gold plating. I remembered the king in the pit. I remembered the molten gold dripping from his hands, burning him, eating him alive. I remembered the sound of the coins vomiting from his mouth when he tried to praise Jesus. I shuddered. This wasn't an award. It was a shackle. I dropped the record into the trash can. It made a loud, final thud. The door flew open. It was Marcus. "What are you doing?" he gasped, looking at the gold record in the trash. "Are you insane? That's a piece of history, Tom. That album went triple platinum." "It's just plastic and paint, Marcus," I said. "It burns. It all burns." "You're having a breakdown," Marcus said, shaking his head. "The stress got to you. You need a sabbatical. Go to the Bahamas. Take a month, but don't throw away your legacy." I looked at Marcus. I felt a deep, aching pity for him. He was so young. He was so hungry. He was exactly who I used to be. He was running toward the cliff edge, convinced he was learning to fly. "My legacy is not on this wall," I said. "My legacy is that I survived." I walked over to him. I put a hand on his shoulder. He flinched, like I was contagious. "Marcus," I said softly, "listen to me. Just for 10 seconds. Listen to the old man." He stopped talking. He looked at me with a mix of fear and arrogance. "You think you are building something here," I said. "You think you are creating culture, but you are just feeding the fire, the music, the fame. It's a trap. It's a shiny trap with steel teeth. Don't let it eat you. Get out while you still have a soul." Marcus laughed. It was a nervous, dry laugh. "Okay, Tom, sure. Save the sermon for Sunday. I have a meeting with the label heads in 5 minutes. If you're quitting, I'll take the big office." "It's yours," I said. "I hope you find the door before the lock clicks." I picked up my cardboard box. It was light. Just a photo and a Bible. That was all I had to show for 50 years on Earth. And it was enough. I walked out of the office. I didn't look back. I didn't say goodbye to the statues. I just pressed the button for the ground floor and prayed for them as I descended. That was 6 months ago. We sold the house, we sold the cars, we sold the stocks. We gave most of the money to a ministry that helps orphans and widows. We kept enough to buy a small cabin about 2 hours outside of the city near the mountains. It is quiet here. There are no billboards. There are no bright lights. At night, you can see the stars. I don't work in marketing anymore. I don't wear suits. My hands, which used to be soft and manicured, are rough again. They are calloused. I went back to my roots. I went back to the only job that ever made sense to me. I work at the local food bank as a volunteer packer. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I stand in a line with other volunteers, retired teachers, mechanics, grandmothers, and I pack boxes. I take cans of soup, bags of rice, and loaves of bread, and I put them into cardboard boxes. It is the same motion I used to do when I was 20. Grab, wrap, pack, grab, wrap, pack. But the feeling is different. When I was 20, I packed records with bitterness, wishing I was the star on the cover. Now, I pack food with gratitude, thanking God that I can feed someone who is hungry. I am not building a career. I am serving. And in the service, I found the silence I was looking for. But the memories of hell do not leave me. They are not as vivid as they were in the hospital, but they are there. They are the scars on my spirit. Sometimes when I am packing a box, I pause. I look at the cardboard, and I see the warehouse in the pit. I see the people packed into crates, suffocating, waiting for the fire. I see the faces of the fans I deceived. It brings me to my knees. Right there on the concrete floor of the food bank, I weep. The other volunteers think I am emotional. They think I am just a sensitive old man. They don't know that I am mourning the dead. I mourn for the King. I think about him every day. The world still plays his songs. I hear them on the radio in the grocery store. Blue suede shoes, love me tender. People tap their feet. They smile. They remember the glory days. But I don't tap my feet. I freeze. I hear the music, but under the music, I hear the screaming. I hear the coins clinking. I see the look in his eyes, the look of a man who realized too late that he had traded his eternal soul for a temporary crown. He wanted to be loved. That was his sin. He wanted the love of the crowd more than the love of the Father. And he got it. He got the crowd. He has them forever. And they are his torment. I am telling you this story not to scare you, but to warn you. I know who is watching this. You might be a musician. You might be a worship leader who secretly wants the spotlight. You might be a businessman building your own empire. You might be a teenager dreaming of being an influencer, thinking that if you just get 1 million followers, you will finally feel happy. Please listen to a man who died and saw the ledger. There are no followers in hell. There are only victims. Fame is not a blessing. Fame is a radioactive element. It looks bright. It gives off heat. But if you hold it too long, it will poison you. It will eat your bones. It will rot your spirit. Do not build a statue of yourself. Do not let others build a statue of you. If you have a gift, if you can sing, if you can write, if you can lead, give it back to God immediately. Do not keep a single percentage of the glory for yourself. Glory is like manna. If you try to store it up for yourself, it turns to worms. I am Thomas. I was a marketing director. I was a warehouse packer. I was a sinner. Now, I am just a voice crying in the wilderness. I am nobody, and that is the safest thing to be. When I die, really die this time, I won't have a gold record on my wall. I won't have a mausoleum. I won't have a legacy that the world remembers. I will have a small plot of land next to Linda. I will have a pine box. But when I wake up on the other side, I won't be in the arena. I won't be in the gallery of statues. I will be in the presence of the carpenter. I will see Arthur there. I will see my mother there. And I hope, I pray, that I will see you there. Don't trade the truth for a lie. Don't trade the water of life for a cup of molten gold. Turn back. While there is still breath in your lungs, turn back. Break the mirror. Smash the idol. The stage is empty. The lights are out. The show is over. It is time to go home. Jesus is waiting.